Just watch your fingers. Mike can include it. I just said to Mike, watch your fingers. This is how professional we are. Hi, everyone. I want to talk about something very interesting. First of all, this is about a used haul, but before we go into it, I'll just talk a little bit about what we're going to show you. So if you ask any seasoned audiophile, what are the most aspirational brands? You'll often hear brands like Bowers and Wilkins, Wilson Audio, Focal, Magico, Sonus, Faber, a lot of great brands, right? Audio Research, D'Agostino, and you can go on and on and on. But if you ask the same seasoned audiophiles a brand called Kondo, most will never have heard of Kondo. And out of the ones that have, which is a very small subset, even fewer have ever heard the product itself. However, you may know the brand better as Kondo Japan. So in 1976, I want to say, if I'm not wrong, Hiroyasu Kondo started his company, and his focus was on making products that are compellingly musical. Not interested in specs, not interested in the biggest power, strictly interested in making products that compel the soul. When you listen to music, it has to move you. And that is essentially what makes Kondo so unique, or Kondo Japan so unique. I won't go into a huge amount of history, but they specialized in making single-landed type tube amplifiers, line stage preamps, phono preamps, and so on and so forth. And while they design apparently speakers, I don't believe they've ever released any speakers. The other thing that's also interesting is that Mr. Kondo was one of the very first to pioneer the use of silver in his electronics. And not just any kind of silver. Apparently he absolutely loved the silver that came out of Italy, and so he would use that type of silver. In addition to that, his standards for components was very, very, very high, and so he ended up making most of the components internally himself, such as, for example, silver capacitors and silver wiring. They went to the expense of buying all this silver from Italy, making the dies and creating their own internal cabling and so on and so forth. They wound and made their own output transformers. The power transformers were made for them by a Japanese company. The cabinets, the enclosures, were made of copper because he felt that copper gave the very best sound, had the right amount of vibration control for resonances, and also to reject electromagnetic interference. Also, all the products are hand-wired from point to point. So from resistor to capacitor and so on, tubes, everything is wired by hand and soldered by hand. They did not use any kind of PCBs because he felt that printed circuit boards over time could crack. You have micro cracks, you have stresses, you have delaminations, and so on. And so he didn't want any of that at all. Let's see if I missed anything. I think that covers everything. One thing I will tell you is that if you do speak with somebody who has in fact owned a Kondo product or continues to own that Kondo product, he is like speaking to a Grateful Dead enthusiast. Die-hard fans. I've yet to meet with somebody who actually has owned a Kondo audio note product who is not a total fanatic. All right, having said all of that, let me show you what we've got. If I'm not wrong, these products are one owner. I'll double check that. If not, at the very, very most, it's two owners. They were commissioned around 2005 and delivered around 2006. And if I'm not wrong, they were actually, a couple of pieces were actually made by the master himself, Mr. Hiroyasu Kondo. So let's start with the line stage first, just because that's my notes. So this is the M7 2K line stage. It's strictly line. It doesn't have a phono, although you can certainly add a phono stage, which is over here. The other interesting thing I wanted to mention is that at the time that these things were made, these products were made, the Audiophile Japan factory had about 7 employees in total, including Mr. Kondo himself. And only 2 of the 7 employees were allowed to make amplifiers, Mr. Kondo himself and then another employee. And all cartridges were made by Mr. Kondo himself. Anyway, that's just a preamble. So that's the line stage. It has 3 inputs, on-off switch over here. Now this, I'm waiting for confirmation from the factory, but as I understand it, the previous distributor told my client that this preamplifier was actually made for a crazy audiophile who wanted to tri-amplify his system. So on the back of this preamplifier, there are actually 3 outputs. A regular full range output, and another one that's labeled LFE, and then the third one which is labeled mid. Now we've tested the regular and the mid output, and they both sound the same. They both appear to have the same output, whereas the LFE appears to only have bass. Anyway, regardless, LPF. Sorry, LPF. Sorry, thank you, Mike. I was thinking of surround sound. Anyway, so that is the preamplifier. We are selling it for $10,950 US or 15,000 Canadian. Physical condition, I would say fair, average to good, not great. I mean, these are basically vintage products at this point, and it's moved. It's been moved maybe a couple times, so it is likely that you will see some light blemishes, but nothing major. Having said that, it's internally wonderful. As soon as you plug it in, let it warm up, you will immediately sense the magic. This is the phono stage. Let me just talk about the phono stage real quick. It's called the M7 2K phono. Now this is not a high gain phono stage, so if you have a low output moving coil, it's not going to be enough, which is why there's that step up transformer over here. But in any case, this phono stage is also commissioned right around that time, 2005, 2006. We're selling it for $10,000 US or 13,750 Canadian. The step-up transformer. Now, this is made by the Audiophile Japan company. Is not called Kondo. I believe they leave the name Kondo for their most exclusive products. Let's see. I have the information here. So, oh, here we go. It's called the AN-S6CZ step-up transformer. It's $2,000 US or 2,800 Canadian. And these are some of the impedance selectors, 1, 3, and 4 ohms, or 40, I should say. And these are the other load selectors as well. Anyway, now we get to the amplifier, the KSL Keygon. Now, the factory calls it an amplifier, but to be more precise, this is actually an integrated amplifier. You have your volume control over here, and you have 3 input selectors over here. And of course, that's your on-off switch. It's based around the 300Bs. Now, around, this was commissioned around, again, about 2005 and delivered around 2006. They originally came with Western Electric 300Bs, but around about 2020 or so, the current owner changed the tubes. So these are no longer Western Electric tubes. If you are absolutely a purist, you may want to change them back to Western Electric, okay? They certainly test fine. They certainly sound wonderful. I just wanted to be clear about that. This amplifier is rated for 22 watts per channel. It's a 300B single-ended, which is why you have 4 instead of 1 each per side. You have 2. And we're selling it for $27,000 US or 37,500 Canadian. Very rare. My guess is that maybe in a year, the factory would have produced a dozen at most. They were, the company was absolutely, when I say fastidious and anal about manufacturing, I'm not joking. If it wasn't quite right, they would start over again. If they didn't have the exact right parts, they wouldn't make it. And therein lies the legend. I think I've covered all these here. So let's go to this here first. This is the AudioNode CDT2 CD transport. So you have this cover over here, and inside you've got the magnetic puck. You pop the disc in. Now it's strictly a transport, okay? Physically, it's got some paint spots, it looks like. We're going to try and remove some of these as much as we can before we sell it. But we've tested it. Everything works fine. This is also a 240 volt, if I'm not wrong. This is 240, right?
All the
230.
audio notes.
Yeah, so these are all, yeah, this is all 230, 240 volt. So you will need a step up transformer. We are selling this one for $11.50 US or $15.50 Canadian. And here you have the AudioNode DAC3 signature. Now this is of the original version. This is not the later versions. Also a 230, 240 volt version. We're selling this for $1,500 US or $2,100 Canadian. Now, despite its age, I will tell you, if you love the beauty in music, the musicality, the organic quality in music, you'd have to spend a ton more, and I'm not so sure that you would necessarily get as beautiful a sound as this would. Certainly the later versions of these might, but you'd have to spend a lot more money. Okay, so, and if I'm not wrong, also they do primarily Redbook. They might do up to 96 kilohertz, but nothing above that because they were designed using specific Philips DAC chips that would only go up to that particular point. Now let's talk about these speakers. Some of you may have already recognized it due to the mid-range driver. This is the ATC made in England. This is the ATC SCM 100s, and they are the powered versions. Each driver has its own built-in amplifier. Weighs about 110, 120 pounds, and it comes with its own stand, which we are not showing here at the moment. The speakers are, if I'm not wrong, this is based on what I could find research-wise, 50 watt amplifier here, RMS, 100 watts here, and bass has 200 watts. It weighs, 128.7 pounds or 58.5 kilograms each. Physically in, again, good condition. There are some light blemishes, light scratches on top. Comes with grills. I think one or two of the grills may be, again, just not in great shape, but speakers are in great condition. One of the dust caps, this one I think, was poked in previously. I think Mike managed to pull it out, but if you look really, really hard, you'll see remnants of it. Doesn't affect the sound at all. No bulk, by the way, all of these items, we do not have the boxes, although I think we should be able to pack them well. This, we have the original paperwork. There was a letter of provenance from the factory and some company brochures. We don't have any paperwork for the preamplifier. I think there may be paperwork for the phono stage, no paperwork for the step up, and no paperwork for the transport or the DAC. The speakers, we have this instruction manual, and we're selling the speakers for $4,100 US or 5,500 Canadian. Mike is, for those of you who know, you know. These are some of the most highly regarded speakers that are out there. Let's do this. This cord is the cord, where do I have my notes here? Here we go. CPA 3200 preamplifier. Again, it's also 240 volts. By the way, these are also 240 volts, so you will need a step-up transformer. It's a line preamplifier. Physically, it's not in great shape. I would say fair, average to fair. There's some scratches over here. Nothing that stops the preamp from working properly. It's just, again, probably over the years it's been moved a number of times, and so you'll see some scratches. Sonically, it's cord. It's very accurate, very transparent, very nice. And we are selling it for $1,500 US or 2,000 Canadian. Comes with a remote control. This is very rare. It's the Simon York S7 turntable with the tone arm. The cartridge is sold separately. I'll talk about the cartridge in a moment. So if you go back about 15 or 20 years ago or so, Stereophile called this one of the best turntables ever, designed and manufactured in England. And we are selling, a turntable was bought around September 2006. We have paperwork for it, if I'm not wrong. And we're selling the turntable for 5,000 US dollars or 7,000 Canadian. And it comes with this slab of, it looks like granite. Again, we don't have packaging for it, but we should be able to ship it safely. It was originally meant for the 220, 240 volt market, but it was converted by the distributor to 115 volts, which is the North American, US, and Canadian spec. Now, the cartridge. This is the fabled Kondo cartridge. It's called the IOJ. And this was handmade by Mr. Kondo himself because only he was authorized to make cartridges during his lifetime. It was also, it was also rebuilt around 2020, if I remember correctly. And since then, it has had very little use. The seller moved to North America, and since then, he's really hardly ever used the system. Anyway, the cartridge will be sold for 2,500 US or 3,500 Canadian. So again, turntable is 5,000 US or 7,000 Canadian. Cartridge is 2,500 US or 3,500 Canadian. Anyway, as always, if you have any questions, email me info@audioexcellence.ca, and I will try and get you as much information as I possibly can. You should also do your own research, because while I love these products and I know somewhat some of it, I certainly am not a font of information as I would have on the other stuff that I generally have more information on. The Kondo, I want to tell you, I've only ever heard the Kondo properly once, and I was absolutely floored at how it evoked the emotions in me. And then subsequent to that, we became an AudioNote UK dealer. AudioNote UK is a completely different company from AudioNote Japan. But in many respects, their philosophy and concepts are similar. And that's why the AudioNote, whether Japan or UK, have such a compelling sound, if you will. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.